I am Judy Clem with the Friends of the Oak Park Conservatory, and we are delighted to welcome you as we learn about the art of landscape design. As part of the Friends mission, we want to help educate and inspire you as gardeners to become more confident in your endeavors. So to that end, our March program is called Get the Dirt, and it will be featuring the infamous Sandy Lentz and the infamous Don Necrocious. And it invites participants to pose any questions that they have about gardening challenges. So it's really not a structured program, although they will talk a little bit about what we should be thinking about and doing in the garden at this time. So I'll send out a link for that sign up after the program tonight. And then just watch for in April, we'll be hosting our Popular Learn and Grow series, which is a lead into the annual plant sale. It's 3 solid weeks of garden lectures and classes from our experts. It's going to be fantastic. And this is just a little bit of what we've put together for you this year. I just want to take a step back and say that the Oak Park Conservatory began as a community effort to house exotic plants residents collected during their travels abroad. It was built in 1929 and is now listed on the National Register for Historic Places. It's free to the public with 50,000 visitors annually. And the conservatory offers a rich atmosphere throughout 3 indoor showrooms featuring more than 3,000 plants. So please come visit if you haven't had a chance to pop in, especially during this cold winter. As a member of the Friends of the Oak Park Conservatory, you can take advantage of early shopping for a plant sale, which we were just talking about. The sale features a large selection of vegetables, herbs, flowers, including many unique varieties, all grown in the Oak Park Conservatory greenhouses. Our little plant babies are already growing. So I was just there this week. I took my pictures. I'm very excited to see the progress they're making. So members, if you're a member, you receive 12 days of priority shopping online and a members only pickup day. So please consider joining the Friends and enjoy our member benefits. Our Friends in Bloom membership drive is happening today. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our special guest this evening. You may know Patty Staley from your visits to the conservatory. She's one of the hardest working women in all of Oak Park. Patty's the Director of Horticulture and Conservatory Operations for the Park District of Oak Park. She has a bachelor's degree in plant and soil science from Southern Illinois University and has worked in the green industry for 25 years. She's held positions in various parts of private and public landscape design, project management, nursery management, and plant propagation. Her passion is creating beautiful, functional spaces and connecting people with what she loves most, which is plants. Kayla Chase is our co-host tonight. She is our membership chair for the Friends of the Oak Park Conservatory. She's also a master gardener, so she knows her stuff, and she will manage our chat tonight, our Q&A at the end. And we ask you to put all of your questions into the chat. Kayla will gather them, and we will try to get to as many as possible, if not all. And without further ado, I would like Patty to share her screen and take us away.
All right, let's
Ready,
see
you guys?
here. Let me get my screen up for you.
Perfect.
And get back to the beginning.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. We can't get into the meeting.
Muted and video disabled.
Can you see our screen? I think we can get rolling, Patty. We'll try to troubleshoot behind the scenes.
Okay, sounds
good. You ready to go?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And thank you for the introduction, Judy. As Judy said, I'm Patty Staley. I'm the director at the Oak Park Conservatory. And I get the pleasure of talking about one of my favorite passions, landscape design. I have spent most of my career in landscape design, construction, and project management. I actually began my career in horticulture, I would say, in public gardening. It was my very first job that I had in horticulture. I was an intern at the Peoria Park District in Central Illinois. Had a beautiful conservatory and botanical garden. That was my very first job with plants. And I have worked in various facets through there, through college, the peach orchards in Southern Illinois, plant propagation research greenhouses. I was the manager of the Natural Garden, which is now a part of Midwest Ground Covers in St. Charles, Illinois, for a stint, and was many years then after that in landscape design construction for a large landscape contractor in the Chicagoland area. I had a lot of fun doing it, but realized that I wanted to hopefully end my career in public gardening. So I'm where I started, and this is what I love, is public gardening and serving the public and designing spaces out in your parks. So that's part of my role at the conservatory, is designing the landscapes in the park, and my team manages the natural areas in the parks in Oak Park. I review master plans for the park district. Ream Park was recently finished last fall, and that was a fun project to do. But tonight, what I'm going to talk about is the art of landscape design, because it is an art while it's a science, and it's the balance of both worlds. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to accomplish tonight and what we're going to cover is we're going to talk about those key elements you really need to know before embarking on designing a garden, planting a garden, looking at your landscape, developing those outdoor rooms outside. So we're going to talk about the design process and what that takes. And then we're going to look at the elements and the principles of a good landscape or garden plan. Let's get started here. And everyone can see my screen? We're good? Okay, good. So let's start with the basic principles of landscape design. So landscape designers, gardeners, we work on a canvas that is distinctly different from other art firms. Our art is a living landscape. It's always changing. The plants are always growing. Environmental conditions change. How we use the space change. So how you use your yard today, if you have a young family, might be different from how you're going to use it in 10 or 20 years from now when you're an active adult. So it's always evolving, always changing, and that makes it fun. Basic principles. So we paint that canvas of our garden, of our yard, based on our needs and desires, the user of the space, the homeowner. And we also, what is essential is we must look at the conditions of our site, of our yard, and not fight them, work with them. So we're going to start off with the design process. So like I said, we're going to start with the design process. We're going to move through that quickly so you can have an understanding what it takes to develop a good design for your garden or your yard. And then the last half we're going to work on is the elements and the principles that go into making a good garden. There are really 5 steps to the design process. And it begins, of course, with that knowledge of the elements and principles. But those 5 steps, and we're going to move through each one, are taking a site inventory and analysis of your property or garden, determining your needs, then creating functional diagrams, developing a concept or many concept plans, and then drawing your final plan. Let's see here, I'm going to move a few things around so I can get my laser up and point out a few things. So first step is taking stock of what you have, whether you're working on your whole property or one part of the yard. Before you're even thinking or talking about plants, whoops, what happened there? There we go. You really need to take stock and look at what you have. Understanding that palette that you're working with is key to making a good plan, and asking those questions and really taking stock, like I said, taking proper measurements, If you have a Plata survey or can locate your Plata survey for your property, it will be the very first thing if you're working with a landscape architect or designer that they will ask you for. Making notes of problem areas on your property. Views from the house are extremely important, especially in our Chicago environment. We are so much of the year inside in these winter months. Just those views outside can sometimes be a saving grace for us in the winter. Location of utilities on your property. I always encourage people to call Julie before they embark on a new garden, so you know exactly what's underground before you put a shovel in the soil. And then observing your sunlight conditions throughout the year. So this is a good site analysis. You can see it doesn't have to be fancy. You're just kind of marking it up. So here's the outline of the house. On this particular site plan, we've marked that there's some good views from the house right there. We've got utilities here, your AC unit, marking kind of those functional things. Back here, you see there's a low spot maybe that we're gonna need to address in the landscape. Even downspouts are important. So here we've marked the downspout and the water from the downspout, how it's draining. The direction too that your house faces is extremely important. And then the style of your house. What's the style of your house? What kind of architecture does your house reflect? After you've finished your analysis and inventory, you're going to analyze your site conditions. So the primary goal of the site analysis is to determine the actions to resolve the problems and identify the opportunity. So you can see there's several things we're doing. We're not even talking about plants. We're not talking about color, nothing. We don't want to talk about that yet. What we need to find out is what's the problem and where's the opportunity, and then go from there. So in this particular, whoopsie, that large there, site analysis, that low area, we've indicated that we need to add fill to this low area. There was a swale, and so we want to maintain that swale along the property. And here too, you can see that. On the inventory, we've marked existing trees, and we've marked now on the analysis which trees we want to keep or where we might want to add trees for more shade. How do we want to redirect water that maybe is a problem? What views we want to keep. So in this particular one, we want to keep this view from the street. There's utilities that maybe we want to hide those because they're ugly. Who wants to look at that? So again, it can be as simple as this. It can be more of a thought through process. Some designers will move through this stage very quickly, depending on the site, and some, where it's a more challenging site, are going to spend more time on this. The interview. So this is my number one. And if you've had the opportunity to join our quick sketch garden design appointments that we do at the conservatory, this is the first thing I do after we have some introductions is I interview you. And if you're working on your own garden, your own design, you can interview yourself, and you should, because you want to ask these questions before you get ahead of yourself. So you make sure you're developing a plan that's working for what your goals are. Sample questions are, you know, what's working well? What do you like about your garden or your landscape? You know, what are some of your favorite features that you're like, yeah, I really like this. I want to keep this. What is not working well? What, you know, when you pull into your driveway or pull up to your house, what are you cringing about? What's not welcoming for you when you're in your backyard? Are you utilizing all of your space? You know, many of us have very constrained backyards. So are you optimizing that backyard? And do you have any home remodeling projects on the horizon? And this is an important one a lot of people don't think about that I'll ask. are you planning any projects to your house? We're not talking about the landscape, but are you going to do a construction project? Are you going to be redesigning your front walkway? That all can affect how the garden flows in and around your house. What issues need to be addressed? Are there privacy issues with a neighbor? Do you have drainage issues? And then kind of getting to know you more personally, what you like to do for fun, what are your interests, your activities? Do you like to entertain? Do you like to have large parties in the backyard? Do you want a spot for a barbecue? Do you like to sit outside and entertain? Do you have children? Do they need, space for play? Do you have a dog? You go think through how you use your home and how you're going to use that outside space. What special elements would you like to incorporate, whether it's a vegetable garden, an outdoor kitchen, and how will the garden be maintained? This is important, that we're not designing or you're not installing a garden that in 2 years from now, you're not going to be able to upkeep it. Budget is always an important question, whether you're a DIYer doing it yourself or you're going to hire someone to do some or part of the project, because there isn't a cost, there is an investment in your landscape and in your garden. The third stage of the design process, and this is really, we're going to kind of just simplify it here, is creating those functional diagrams. If you sat with me in a quick sketch, I think it's the part people enjoy the most, watching how I take their Plata survey and I start making bubbles and I start drawing lines. And then all of a sudden we've moved from a bubble diagram that's showing the house, the green space, your walkways, into, okay, how do we really want that walkway to look? And do we want more of an informal path leading to the back? To, okay, now we're talking about, where am I putting focal points? Where am I putting trees, shrubs, the ground cover layer, native gardens? From here, this gets more detailed. That's the stage we start talking about plant palette. So I'm here when I'm in these beginning stages. I maybe am working through this on my own while you're sitting across from me and I'm giving you homework. Okay, make me a list of what plants that you like, which ones you don't like, colors, textures, that kind of stuff. That doesn't come until the end. And oftentimes when I'm doing those concept plans, and I consider this right here, this end, more of a concept plan because we haven't really named plants yet. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these. And I might swap out, okay, you don't like this type of plant, we're going to find another type of plant, but it's going to have the same form and function and reason why we put it there. All right, so we've moved through the design process rather quickly, but that's the homework you want to do. And when you are moving through those stages, you want to keep in mind, as you're starting to develop the garden or the plan, the elements and principles of landscape design. And these are your guidelines to arranging and organizing your space and the features to create an aesthetically pleasing and beautiful landscape. You can do this with a garden that is all native plantings, or you can do this with a garden that is ornamental or a mixture of both. It applies to all types of landscapes and it serves a purpose. So there are 8 elements or principles when you're designing your landscape or your garden. Those are line, form, texture, color, proportion, repetition, and unity. There we go. So we're going to go through each one of these, and let's see, we're sitting at 7:24, so we're doing really good on time, and I think we'll be able to dive into each one of these while it's not becoming overwhelming. But what I would like you to keep in mind is you're going to take all these elements And you're not going to leave here tonight with being able to sit down and remember each one and actually draw a plan. It comes with practice. It comes with doing many garden sketches, installing them, falling on your face, learning from them. And the more practice you have, the better you become at it. What's, I think, important is for you all to know these are the steps and the things that are going through if you're hiring a landscape designer or you're visiting a garden that you love. These are the things to look for in what makes that garden or that design beautiful. Lines are my favorite element. I spent a lot of time before I'm talking or thinking about plants or what kind of hardscape we're using on the lines of your garden. There are 4 types of lines, and lines really determine how people respond to the landscape, both emotional and physical. And you can kind of see examples down here. Straight lines. Straight lines are very structural, they're forceful. They create a formal character. Even through this prairie setting, the straight pathway has really formalized that area. They lead the eye to a focal point. While curved lines are very informal, they're natural, they're relaxed. They make the eye move at a slower pace. They add mystery behind creating hidden views. Vertical lines in this picture here, you have a lot of vertical lines with either plant material or walls, garden walls, pergolas. They really move your eye, and especially in a small landscape, in an upward space, making the space feel larger. So a lot of nice urban backyards have vertical elements to move the eye up and make the space feel larger. They can emphasize a feature. They include tall, narrow plant materials, like I mentioned, tall structures, even something as simple as an arbor or a birdhouse on a pole can be a vertical line for your garden. Horizontal lines, they move the eye along the ground plane. So in this bottom picture, it's a low garden wall. And what that does is it's really just moved your eye and kept it more towards the ground. It makes the space feel larger, and it creates a feeling of rest or repose. And like I said, this is a garden wall, but over here in this example, you know, that was created with just using a low hedge. Form is the next element. Yeah, let's see here. This can be found in both hardscape and plants, and it's typically the dominant visual element that organizes the landscape. So you'll notice if you've seen any of my drawings, I like to use a lot of circular designs with larger landscapes. But when I move to more of the urban backyard settings, we do more square forms. The circular design is actually the strongest design form. The eye is always drawn to the center, and it can be used to emphasize a focal point or connect forms. So sweeping lines are a very popular design form for landscapes, whether they're sweeping hardscapes, sweeping bed lines. They really connect a space. It could just be the backyard, you're connecting space across hardscapes, or it could be you know, looking at the whole property, connecting front to back to side using that circular form with bed lines and hardscapes. The square form in a design is an easier form to work with for construction. So a lot of your contractors really appreciate a square or straight line design. It optimizes your materials, especially when you're looking at hardscapes. You don't have so many cuts. As opposed to, you know, a pathway like this where you're going to have more cuts on the brick or the stone. And like I said, excellent for a small urban backyard. And don't let the square design, I think, scares a lot of people. When they want more of a naturalistic garden, you can have that with a square design form. Irregular is probably one of the most, I don't want to say most unpopular, but probably one of the most less used form of design because it can become very complex. And simplicity is really important when using this irregular bedline form, whether it's with bedlines for your gardens or hardscapes. It is often used more in larger landscapes, English garden type landscapes. You see this as more of an older style, but not out of date, still can use it, form to use. When we talk about forms, then we start thinking about plants, and we start thinking about plant forms and how they're going to work together. So when you think about trees, if you've ever been to a nursery shopping for a tree, this is very common how nurseries catalog how they organize their trees. Are you looking for a round tree? Are you looking for something more oval and upright for a tight space? Or columnar, oval, so more of like your red maples. Pyramidal could be a juniper. Vase shape and weeping. Weeping tends to be more of like that focal point type of plant form. And then we move to more of like the ground cover, the shrub, the native plant material layer, and looking at those plant forms. And this applies with natives as well. Looking at more of the spiky, the grasses, or more of the mat forms like, prairie smoke, that's more of a mat form. So same applies. Texture is one of the elements that's super important to me when I'm doing a design. When people give me back their plant palette of, I like these plants, I think, and I know the plants, I know them all very well because I've studied them, and I'm always just engrossing myself in what plants are out there, what are the new plants coming out, what are popular, just understanding their leaf shape, their habit. Texture to me is more important than color, because texture is with you through the season and sometimes even after the season. It provides that variety, that interest, that contrast that maybe you're not going to get in all 4 seasons with color. A coarse texture is more dominant than a fine texture. Coarse textured plants attract the eye and hold it. So for instance, hostas, rhododendrons, magnolias, cannas, they're all coarse textured plants. That also applies to your hardscapes and your garden elements, the texture that you're integrating in there, this coarse stone wall against the grasses that are fine textured. Unfinished wood with knots is coarse textured. This water feature here is coarse textured. Fine textured is more subordinate to coarse texture. It unifies the composition in the landscape. It exaggerates distance and gives a feeling of a larger space, more open space. And often you see grasses, ferns, Japanese maples, twining vines, even evergreens like a fine textured juniper or a pine that give you that fine texture. Smooth stone like these Mexican pebbles, water. So it's taking the coarse texture and the fine texture and balancing it out in your garden. And to me, like I said, that really is more important than color, just having that nice balance. But of course, we want to talk about color. Color is the focus of what most homeowners want to talk about. So, number one, I like these colors. I don't like these colors. I'm more attracted to this color wheel. But, keep in mind, color is temporary. But it is important. It's important for creating that interest and that variety. Colors have properties that can affect emotions. It can affect your, it can affect your spatial perception, the light quality, the balance, emphasis on a part of the garden. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the color wheel, so we won't cover that, but just quickly, cool colors, you know, are the more calming. They're used for relaxation and serenity. They tend to recede and are perceived as being farther away. They make a space feel larger. While warm colors, they tend to advance and are perceived as being closer. They make a space feel smaller. Warm colors tend to be more exciting, of course. We have bright oranges, yellows, reds, and you know, it's a good idea to use them in more lively areas for entertaining and parties. Proportion and order are the next two elements we'll just cover quickly. Proportion is important because it really relates to the size of your house, your yard, and the areas you're being planted. So that's why it's important to have that PLATA survey, even if you're going to meet with a designer or you're having someone work on a garden plan for you. You want to look at the whole property. You want to look at the size of your house, the yard, and make your gardens proportional to that. Proportion can be found in the plant material. You want to make that relative to the people. So there's balance and it feels harmonious. So, in this sketch here, we have a pergola structure. And oftentimes landscape designers, when they'll do, sketches such as this, they'll put people in the space to make sure we've used the right elements, whether the right type of sizes of plants with the garden features. Does it feel right in that space? Order refers to the spatial layout of the design, and it's achieved through balance. Form, color, size, texture, they all affect balance. Your balance can be symmetrical, asymmetrical, or perspective. So in this diagram, this is a very symmetrical design. You can draw a line right down the middle, and what's happening on the left side is happening on the right side. And with the same use of materials, you can make this feel more asymmetrical by balancing the weight of what's over here with the weight of what's over here. That really is more of a personal choice that you will have for your landscape, and something that I often ask clients to think about is, what are you more attracted to? Do you want more of an asymmetrical feel to the landscape, or do you like that symmetrical balance? Perspective is a fun element, and it really forces you through a space. Euclid, if you're familiar with Euclid Park, that park, when it was redesigned several years ago, we designed that with a force perspective to balance the park and to move you through the space, and it works very well. Okay, we're nearing the end, just a few more elements, and then we're gonna wrap it all, tie it in together. Repetition, repeating use of elements and features to create patterns or sequences in the landscape. And that can be simple. That doesn't have to be, I'm repeating every plant throughout my garden. It can be used by using the same color in different plants or texture. And these pictures here, you have some repetition where in the background you can see, I think this is maybe Sporabilis was used with some Paroschia, and then it was used again here. So there's repetition that tie a very large yard together. Over in this schematic, you can see you have some repetition with this purple spiky plant that then is repeated here and it pops up here. It could be done with hardscapes. with the shape of your hardscape. So this patio space with the fire pit, the square form, is also repeated over here. Hedges are carried across the yard. So that is really important, tying like a whole yard together so that you have some repetition. In the bottom picture, that's achieved with just, I think this is a Hakone grass. You see there's 3 of them. So there's a lot going on in this garden, but those 3 bright colored grasses, that repetition, as simple as it is, that really ties it all in so it doesn't look so crazy for you. Unity is achieved by linking elements and features to create a consistent character. Harmony, bring it all together. And that can be done in many different ways. There's actually 4 very common ways unity is achieved in a garden. You have this very busy garden, right? We've got a lot of the same texture plants. Things have gone out of bloom, but bam, we've put a bird bath. We put something there and it's unified the space. It's made sense of it. With planters, it can be done. You can group planters, grouping your plants together to create that interconnection in the garden. Unity of 3 is, that's kind of one of those golden rules of thumb when you're doing design, whether it's 3 planters, right? Take one of those away. That doesn't feel unified, but that 3 or 5 or 7 or 9, it makes it feel unified. And that's the same goes with plants. You'll also often hear landscape designers is like, I'm not going to do 1Z, 2Z here. We got to do 3 or 5 of those. Let's do 7 or 9 or 11. I use a lot of the same plants and I repeat them. So, for instance, this looks like maybe either blue oak grass or blue fescue that's repeated, and at the end it's repeated, and you're using 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 15 of those. And then you're creating focals with that one plant, that one bright plant. It's here. It pops up actually back there too. There's 3 of them. They carry you through. It can be simple as, having 5 clump birch trees and then repeating, unifying that space with the mirrored benches. Let's see where we're at. Okay, we're at 7:42, so we're going to bring it all together and we're going to summarize this and where do you go from here? So I'm going to give you the key secret that every landscape designer and architect learns when they're in school. And the best way to create a good design is to borrow ideas from designs that you find attractive and adapt them to your particular site. We like the word borrow. We don't use steal. We're not stealing each other's ideas. That made it okay. We're all, I'm stealing, I'm borrowing your idea with what you designed over here, and I'm going to apply it to the design I'm working for so-and-so on this property. You can do that yourself through visiting botanical gardens, demonstration gardens, walking around the neighborhood, taking out your cell phone, taking pictures of your neighbors, yards that you like, maybe introduce yourself, hey, you mind if I take a picture of your yard? I love it. And just keep gathering those ideas from places you visit, gardens you see, walks you take through the neighborhood, of things that really evoke that emotion in you that you love. That's some homework when I'm working on larger designs for people that I'll give them. I'm like, you need to go gather ideas. Back in the day, you used to thumb through magazines or you make Pinterest boards of gardens you like. That works too. And then we are going to borrow from those ideas. We're going to see what excited you about those to work into your garden plan. You're going to discover and identify your own personal style. Again, observing the landscapes. When you're observing the landscapes or you're visiting a botanical garden or a demonstration garden, try to identify those key elements they use. That curved form, that repetition of color, that vertical dominating element. Look for those elements, and then you'll begin to understand why you like that particular neighbor's yard or that particular garden. You'll understand what is the property or the element of it that attracted you to it. Comparing the architectural style of your house and find similarities in the landscape that complement your house. That's important as well. I'll often, ask people, take a picture of your house. Just stand across the street. I want a whole picture of your house. I want to see what the architectural style is, the lines of the house, so that the garden is complementing the house. The garden, when you pull up, should complement the house. That makes it feel right and balanced. So the summary, the fundamental concept of landscape design is a science. It's a problem solving through horticulture science. And then we're bringing in the art, the artful composition, the spatial organization. We're creating attractive, functional outdoor rooms, whether we're using, like I said, natives, we're using a lot of hardscapes, we're using perennials, we're using annuals, whatever we're using, that we haven't even talked about. What we're talking about here is using those elements and creating those outdoor spaces that you love and enjoy. So thank you. I'm going to end it there. I know it was a lot to get through. It's one of my only talks I give where I haven't really even talked about plants. But this is, like I said, this is the key to really designing a good garden. And when you're sitting with a landscape architect or designer, or you're doing it yourself, take the time to think and go through this approach and think about the elements and learn the steps, and you will be happier at the end when you're able to have then the fun of picking the elements and the plants and the textures and the colors for your garden. Any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. That was great. Just everything that you covered was so like all inclusive, but also like really applicable to just going in and just starting this. So there was a few questions. I think the first one, kind of near the beginning, you talked a little bit about a plat of survey. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit more about that? How would one find that, or go a little more into that, please?
Right. So if you're a recent homeowner, if you just purchased a house or built a house, your plat of survey is given to you when you purchase your home. So look for those papers. If you've got that folder from when you closed on your home, you should have that. I'm trying to remember the department with the city that you can go to. Generally, it is on record. If it's an older home, sometimes it's a little more challenging to find the plat of survey, or perhaps even if you do, you've had some remodeling done and that plat of survey is not current. But if you've had construction done on your house, it is a requirement for permitting that your contractor has to have the plat of survey, and they use that for permitting. So maybe even look for if you've had some construction done.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. And then you actually mentioned about calling Julie. Maybe do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because I know Julie's not a person, but I want to make sure that everyone knows Julie's not a person.
Yeah, so Julie is, and I'm going to get the phone number because my staff, when we do projects in the park, they call Julie. So I haven't called Julie for a while. So Julie is a utility service where they come, it's free. There's no charge for it. You call Julie, and generally it used to be at least 48 hours notice. There we go. Thank you, Judy. You can call or go online and make a request for them to come mark your property. They'll mark where your gas line is, your electricity. They'll mark where everything is underground, water lines, where that's run.
Awesome, thank you. So a few more questions. What's the best way to find the sunniest spot that you have in your yard? So let's say if you want to put like a vegetable garden, you need that high sun. How would you go about finding that?
Yeah, so knowing which way your house orientates is helpful, but sometimes that means nothing. So you really need to look at shading around the property, neighbors' trees. Do you have a tall privacy fence? So just observation, take a weekend and, at 7 or 8 in the morning, observe where the sun is and where it's hitting in your yard. 10 or 11, make that observation again. When you get to 2 or 3 p.m., again, and then at sunset. So observing where the sun is hitting, and it's going to be different from winter to spring to summer to fall because of the height of the sun. So you're going to want to observe it in the later spring and summer months when the optimal growing time is.
Awesome. Also, what's a swale?
Oh, okay. A swale is a landform. It's often created in a property or to divert water from going a certain way. So if you have drainage issues, sometimes you create a swale to keep the water moving and flowing. It's simple. It can be simple as how the landform, your soils are graded to create that swale. It could be swales. Now you're seeing more and more where swales have become either rain gardens or bioswales. So bioswales right there. So we're not just creating the landform into a swale, but we're using those great native plants to help absorb that water, because maybe that water doesn't have anywhere else to go. And you're moving it to an area where it's going to just continue to be a problem.
Gotcha. That actually brings in a second question is when you're thinking about incorporating a water feature, and I know you showed like some examples, how high maintenance are they, especially here in the Midwest where we have winters?
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
please?
I have a love-hate relationship with water features. Years ago when I worked for a landscape contractor, I remember them, the guys would come in and be like, another water feature, water features can be done in Chicago. There is maintenance involved in them, and there's a life expectancy to them. There is a cost to doing a water feature. So you have to kind of balance that with, your budget, and then the maintenance aspect of it. And then knowing down the road, with our winters in Chicago, that there is a life expectancy to a water feature. I mean, you look at like the fountain downtown Chicago and how much work and how much investment goes into the water features, in the city. So, but they can bring great sense of peace to your garden and a focal point. And you can do water features in many ways. You don't have to get crazy. It could be a simple, Henry I fountain that you purchase, and it's just plugged in through an electrical outlet in your backyard. Or it could be a pond. Ponds are definitely more involved and more maintenance. So it all depends on your style.
Thank you. So transitioning a little bit, thinking about online resources. I know you showed, that kind of diagram, the diagram that you did of the yard, like the circles. Are there apps or tools online that you can recommend that are good for that, for someone kind of just starting out?
I can't think of anything. I mean, there's so many resources online. I can't say I've dabbled online, with what's out there right now. But probably, the one thing, I'm more of a hands-on person, and I think this is a very tactile, hands-on thing. We live in an area where landscape architecture is just The resources are endless. Check with local community colleges. There are several that have really good, strong hort programs. And those classes, I mean, a lot of those classes are filled with people who are they just want to learn for themselves. They aren't necessarily interested in getting, associates or a certification. We actually have a few of our FOPCon volunteers I know that take courses. So Triton, I think, is the closest one to Oak Park. College of DuPage has an excellent horticulture program. So, look for those, local community classes, even, occasionally garden centers or nurseries will offer, courses on landscape design, just like quick one-day classes.
Gotcha. And then I know you said, kind of walk around in terms of trying to get ideas. I know you were saying, walk around. Someone in the chat also suggested, tiny backyards in Oak Park, kind of to see how that's utilized. But are there any other good ideas that any good websites that, you find are a great resource for ideas?
Yeah, because it can just be a rabbit hole if you just type into Google, right? I encourage a lot of, my clients when I used to do design work to go on Pinterest. Pinterest is fun because you can make boards of, you can have boards of, garden elements and plants and vegetable gardens and outdoor kitchens. You can kind of make boards and just have fun with it where it's easy. Just visiting, I really think, if you're able to and you have the opportunity, whether it's locally, there's Morton Arboretum, Chicago Botanic Garden. We have so many great parks, Cantini Gardens out, in the western suburbs. Visiting gardens is just great. And then if you can travel, or if you travel on vacation, I'm always dragging my kids on vacation. Like, we're going to go to this botanical garden, or we're going to go check out this park, or we're going to go to this national park. And even, your national parks, incorporate, these elements. So just in your travels.
I think that's also a great time to mention that if you're a member of the Friends of the Oak Park Conservatory, there's reciprocal benefits. So you can get into a lot of other places for free when you're traveling. Just like a plug there, not for any reason.
Yeah, and someone put up in the chat the FOPCon, the garden walk with Oak Park River Forest. Garden walks are excellent ways. Yeah, for sure.
I really
sometimes with garden walks, I know, back in the day, for some of my clients would be on garden walks, and I would make it a point to be there. So I could, as a designer, I could talk through kind of those elements in the design approach. So those are great ideas.
Yeah, I really liked also how you framed it about borrowing ideas. Because, I know another way of kind of thinking about ideas is to go out to natural spaces and look at the way colors are just as nature puts them. And you can't exactly steal those ideas, right? You're borrowing them. So it's another place to kind of really get ideas is just our parks as well.
Right. Yeah.
Another question, how do you find a landscape designer?
Yeah, that's probably, where do I get plants from? And how do I find a good designer or contractor? Those are the two top questions I get when I do my quick sketch design appointments. We don't ever really like to refer one person over another because there are so many great designers out there. But there is an organization actually locally here in Chicago. It's called the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association. And it's ilca.net. And this is a nonprofit organization. It is one of the largest in the United States. It's just right here in our backyard. I have many good colleagues that are a part of the organization. And it's a collection of landscape contractors, designers, nurseries, garden centers, hardscape companies. And they have a professional side to their website and a homeowner side to their website. And contractors, designers, firms, they pay to be a part of this organization, and this organization provides top-notch education, training, continuing education. One of the largest landscape conventions in the United States. I just attended a few weeks ago. It's called Landscape in the Midwest. It happens in Schaumburg every year. And it's so much fun getting together with all of the landscape architects, contractors, providers in the area. And we learn from each other. There's a lot of, seminars and continuing education. So they're a good resource. Neighbors, talking to neighbors who've had landscaping done. You want to look for someone when you go into construction that's licensed and bonded, and always ask for 3 references. I mean, that's right. We do that whenever we do construction at our house, give you 3 references.
Sounds great. I think there's 2 main questions just for the sake of time. One is, what are the permits required for Oak Park? Do you have any idea where even to access that information? How do you learn about that?
So Village of Oak Park, not Park District of Oak Park, Village of Oak Park is where you want to go. I don't live in Oak Park, so I'm not involved when the park side of things in the permitting and whatnot of that. So I can't tell you on the Village of Oak Park. Probably it's their building division that you need to go to.
If you're working with a landscape architect, they're going to help guide you on where to go for your permits. As a homeowner here in Oak Park, I did have to get permits for, I think, our new patio or something like that. And so I just had to go online, and I was directed with what links, but certain things do not need permits. But when you're talking about more hardscaping, you do need to get a permit for those things. Yeah. Village of Oak Park website has all that information, but your designer should guide you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure with the Village of Oak Park, and I did read something about this the other week. I know when I used to work out like in Glen Ellen and that, if you're doing any even garden or planting in the parkway, you had to have a permit. I'm not sure if Village of Oak Park is the same. So that's something you might want to check into.
Talk to me later about parkway gardening, guys.
Yeah.
Contact me directly about that, and I can tell you what I know.
Awesome. And I think maybe we'll do the last question. There's a couple people really wanted to know more about soundproofing your yard against noise or unwanted noise. So for more of that home DIY. Yeah,
so that's where you're going to want to look at some vertical elements to help soften or create a sound barrier. A lot of more columnar evergreens, even just like a garden wall or pergola wall is helpful. We're at the conservatory, we're like right next to Eisenhower. So we've got the train, we've got all of it going on. And so, sometimes it's a challenge you can't fight adding, that's where that water feature, that garden element, having the smoothing sound of water is nice. Wind chimes, if it doesn't drive your neighbor insane, you want to be mindful of your neighbor.
Awesome. I think that's kind of what we had.
Yeah, I think if anybody wants to unmute or open up your videos, we can say hi and chat a little bit more. But I just want to take a moment to thank Patty so much for taking her time to give us this information, and the presentation tonight was fantastic. And it really has opened my mind a lot more about how to look at the bigger picture and kind of don't look so microscopically, but take a step back and really see the whole space before I start making decisions about what I want to plant. And we're so grateful to have you as a resource in our community. Patty does do the quick sketch design. So you can sign up if it's not already full, but please look for that on the PDOP website. We do have a great talk coming up with Master Gardeners Sandy Lentz and Donna Crocious, where it'll just be open forum. You can bring all of your garden questions on March 6th or 8th. I'll send out an email with that. And then we have Learn and Grow coming up, but I know one of our committee members from the Oak Park River Forest Garden Walk is on today. So keep an eye out for that in June, because that is a great way to kind of see beautiful landscaping right here in our community. And it's such a wonderful experience for that. And that comes in June. And plant sales coming. So make sure you get your membership if you want to get first pick at those gorgeous plants we're growing. What else did I want to mention? I don't know. I think, is that it? There's always more. We've got a ton of stuff going on forever. So you want to unmute, say hi. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes. But thank you again, Patty.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome.
It was fun.
Thank you. It was really good.